What is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, however you are consuming Talking Buffalo. Appreciate you guys a lot. Today's show, as always, is presented by the law office of William Mattar. Heard in a car, call William Mattar, 444-4444. Call William Mattar today to get the compensation that you deserve. All right, folks, things are a little bit out of whack right now. This is our Tuesday podcast, but I'm actually live on the video side here on Monday night. Things are being pushed back a day. Normally, we do a Tuesday episode where after a Sunday Bills game, we watch the film, we go over the grades and, you know, all of our biggest takeaways from that. Then Matt Warren comes on the next day, positional analysis. That's getting pushed back a day because for the first time in a long time, it is an EMERGIPOD situation. Been quite a while for that. The Buffalo Sabres make a major change at general manager. So on that note, here again, live on the video side, I'm joined by my very good friend, OG of the show, hockey writer, sports media personality, my guy, Joe Yerdon, man. What's going on, buddy? How you doing? What's up?
Busy day, eh? I mean, holy smokes, man. It's getting back on for an EMERGIPOD's kind of wild because I remember doing an EMERGIPOD with you. I don't even know. Maybe it was when Jason Botterill was fired.
It was
5 years ago, more than 5 years ago. Holy smokes, man.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute since we've had, especially on the Sabres side, an EMERGIPOD because it felt like Kevyn Adams was never going to get fired, to be honest with you. That did happen. This is going to be fun for me, at least anyway, because I am, when it comes to hockey especially, I am a fan. I don't try to be anything else, whereas Joe obviously covers the team. You are in that building pretty much every single day. So we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about that today on this EMERGIPOD. Kevyn Adams is out. Jarmo Kekalainen is in. I'm going to get your thoughts on a lot of that. It's been Joe, you know what, man, real quick before we get in here. Sports-wise, has been great for the Bills, for the Sabres this last 24 hours. Sabres fans, I should say, anyway. Yes. Let's not beat around the bush. The vast majority of Sabres fans are really, really happy right now. The Buffalo Bills, of course, on Sunday, erase a 21-point deficit. They put it on the New England Patriots. And again, tomorrow's show, Wednesday podcast, will have a ton of film and all that stuff. But, the Sabres, man, Joe, Kevyn Adams fired nearly halfway through his sixth season. This is a team that under his leadership at general manager never finished better than 20th in the standings. 31st, 24th, 20th, 22nd, 26th, and they were tied for 24th as of this firing. 178, 196, 42 record. Look, I could go on for days and days about the stats, the numbers. We all know Terry Pegula put out a statement, and I do want to say that we are recording this Monday. Things are going to be happening. You're going to hear a lot of stuff on Tuesday, depending on when you listen to this podcast. Let me just start here with Kevyn Adams. How surprised, if at all, were you to hear this on Monday? We talked a little bit off camera here. We'll kind of rehash a little bit of that for the audience, but this didn't come down to roughly around 2 p.m. on Monday, and I'm starting to doubt if it was going to happen, at least on this day. What was your thought process on this? How surprised are you, and is this the right time for it?
My surprise level was probably about minus 50. I was kind of banking on this one to happen. Once the folks started talking and, we started hearing stuff. My good pal, Chad DeMonesis heard some rumbles, and then Tim Graham hears some rumbles. Yeah. And once Tim says he's hearing stuff, I'm like, yeah, all right. And I think all that really kicked up after they lost 7-5 to Calgary, and started off that 6-game road trip 0-3. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, these guys probably needed 8 points on this road trip to be able to, really hang in there and stick close to this race and whatnot. And when you start 0-3, it's like, well, are they going to be able to get 6 points out of the last 3 games? And if they don't do that, how ugly does it get when they come back? And then, of of course, sure enough, they win the last 3 games of the road trip, classic Sabres style, and get their first 3-game win streak of the season, which they're going to carry into Thursday's game when they get back on the ice finally. But to say this is a surprise, it's not a surprise at all. I mean, this was, the team flew back late last night from after beating Seattle. So I was thinking the chance of hearing something early in the morning probably wasn't likely, although I was still up at the crack of dawn just in case, because once you're on high alert for this stuff to maybe happen, you gotta just kind of sit and wait and see what's gonna happen. And 2:00 today, news comes out, and it's not a big surprise. I mean, it's a move you could argue could have been made over the summer. It's a move that could have been made 2 summers ago when they fired Don Granato. When when you're able to go back that far with these kinds of things where you say like, well, they could have done it here, they could have done it there. It's not great. And, there's been plenty of opportunities for this team to get on the right side of things and get a lot of other business taken care of that a GM should take care of. And it hasn't happened. And the team has been very up and down, very mercurial, which you could say, oh, maybe that's coaching. Well, I don't know. Coach can only deal with what's going on. But when Noah Ostlund gets sent down because they're carrying 3 goalies and Lindy Ruff makes it very clear, I didn't want to send him down. He shouldn't be going anywhere. Well, then it's kind of putting it right on the GM for putting them in that situation. So it was that it's not to say that Lindy made it happen, but that's a pretty damning words from Lindy to speak his mind like that and air out his frustrations because nobody likes the 3 goalie thing, especially the goalies.
I'm not going to ask you if you're surprised that Lindy Ruff spoke out about that because I'm sure you're not. I mean, you're around Lindy and you know that he pretty much says what he means. But I will say that when I heard those comments, I was like, that sounded to me without saying, without calling out Kevyn Adams and saying him by name directly, that sounded like an incredibly frustrating. Like, I think he said the only negative thing about Ostlund is that he's not here with us right now. I know I'm paraphrasing the way he said that, but that was pretty much straight to the point, and that felt directly damning to Kevyn Adams. We were talking about this for a few minutes before we started this live show. And again, thank you everybody, who's watching us on the live side. We're well over 300. We're just minutes into this. But Sunday night, I did a live Bills post-game show with Joe from Queens like I do every week. And after that, it was late. It was around 11 o'clock or so. I ran to Wegmans because I was concerned that there might be some weather coming in Monday to Buffalo, which to some extent there is. It's enough to be annoying anyway. So
right.
I went shopping. I did some editing. I put a couple clips together, just kind of dicking around. I went to bed real late is what I'm getting at here. But even though I was tired, I got up Monday morning by 7:30, 7:45, and I at least got up and checked my phone. And I'm waiting to see a Kevyn Adams tweet. Nothing at 7:30, 8 o'clock. Nothing at 9:30. Now I'm in the Bills film, and I'm starting to put together what would be Tuesday's podcast, a lot of notes and things like that, a lot of talking points. And now it's lunchtime. I'm like, this just not happening today. It's just not going to happen. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but it certainly doesn't seem like it's happening today, which then I start thinking, well, all right, they're back on the ice. They got a game Thursday. They're back on the ice Tuesday. I'm wondering if this is just going to happen at all. I start thinking in my mind, well, they won 3 in a row on the road and, yada, yada, yada. Gets past lunchtime, and then you just reminded me because I couldn't remember the time, but 2 o'clock. Are you surprised that it came down that late? Like, once it got to be, I don't know, again, you covered the team professionally. Once it got to be 1:30 and nothing's come down, are you starting to think as well that maybe this ain't happening, at least not right now?
In the back of my mind, it was a little bit. I know that there's Bills media availability today, like the Monday press conference where McDermott kind of goes over, okay, here's who's hurt, here's what's going on. So I was thinking, maybe you're going to clear the decks for the Bills to have the day because that's like by the schedule. Those guys have that stuff to get taken care of. But then you also have to keep in mind the Sabres played on Sunday night. It was 8 o'clock. It was an 8 o'clock start here. Eastern time, 5 o'clock out in Seattle, and they were flying back after the game. So they didn't get back till about, 4 or 5 a.m., depending on weather and all that stuff. But that's a really late night to get back. And if they were going to do something at 9 a.m., imagine being Kevyn Adams, who was on the road trip, getting home at 4 or 5 a.m., getting back into bed, and 3 hours later, they're asking you to come down to the office because Terry wants to talk to you, and then what's coming. But I think that was just a matter of being fair to everybody, honestly, because it's a long day. So, but I did wonder, because I figured if something does come down on Monday, they're probably going to do all the media side of things on Tuesday, just because the team's going to be back on the ice practicing. Everybody's going to be get your day off after travel, all that stuff. But yeah, it's a little bit of an odd time. It's not really like a bury the news kind of thing. That kind of news is not buriable, no matter what. No matter what, you put that out at 9 o'clock at night if you want to. It's gonna be first and foremost on the nighttime news, and everybody's gonna be chewing it up, during intermissions of games tonight, and then all day tomorrow. So, but yeah, it's as far as like the business side of it goes, it makes sense. You get a night's sleep, and then it's like, all right, time for a meeting and a sit down, and hey, we're making a move.
Let me ask you this question, and I'm going to preface this by saying it's probably unfair, because in a way I'm asking you to speculate, maybe at least on some levels. We hear the news, whether you're a fellow colleague, a reporter, whether you are a fan of the team, whether you hate the team. You've heard the news. Everybody's heard the news over the last handful of days that it felt certainly like Kevyn Adams' time was coming to an end. It wasn't reported directly that, hey, he's going to get fired on Monday, but the sense was the clock is ticking. Like literally, Jeremy White had a tweet from WGR with a ticking clock, a pendulum swinging clock. So it's like, that's coming in. If we hear that and we know it, you can only imagine Kevyn Adams does as well. Kind of like, I don't know, I mean, you know him at least a little bit anyway. You think it's like for the last 20, like they're in Seattle, they're playing the Kraken, they win the game, you go to bed at night, do you think that he went to bed on Sunday night? I guess what I'm asking you is, do you think he went to bed on Sunday night knowing when he woke up on Monday, if he didn't already know ahead of time that when he woke up Monday, what he was going to be waking up to?
I'm betting ever since the loss to Calgary that the rest of that road trip was probably really uneasy. I caught Elliot Friedman's podcast this morning, first thing getting up, because he was talking about all of that. And, he had mentioned that, from what people he noticed of Kevyn Adams on the road, he did not look like he was in a very pleasant mood. How could he be? The team was not doing well, and the coach kind of calls him out. All kinds of things are just going sideways for him. He still hasn't gotten Alex Tuck re-signed. All of these different things are just kind of piling up around you. And you just kind of, I think when you're in that position, you just kind of know things aren't right. And this probably isn't going to go well. And if they made that move while they were on the road, while he was on a road trip, boy, that'd be a whole other thing, because that kind of goes against how the Sabres kind of do business with this stuff. Usually if they're going to make a big move like that, the team's at home, people are here. You don't want to be changing the GM out on the road. You don't want to do all that stuff, because it's just, it causes a lot of other issues, not to mention the whole fact that, you're firing somebody while you're away from home. That's a really tough situation, but, it's such a long trip. That's their longest road trip since, I think, 2012, where they were gone for 2 weeks. That's crazy to be gone for almost 2 weeks, 6 games worth, doing the whole, Western Canada tour. And, for Adams to have to kind of chew on that after seeing the team play just brutal hockey, a 7-5 loss. And then, Lindy's, kind of taking a shot there, and, just airing frustration. He's not taking a shot. He's just airing frustrations that a guy that he wants in the lineup can't be there because they got to carry 3 goalies. And then, the answer kind of presents itself when Colton Ellis gets run over in Edmonton the next night. And you're just like, okay, well, this is just what this whole situation's kind of boiled down to. And, for Kevyn, I'm sure it was not a very happy end of the road trip, even with the team winning, because you get that feeling like once you get home, you're like, hey, if Terry calls, then I know it's bad news, but you're just hoping that, hey, maybe the team saved my job for a little bit longer. But I think once that started 0-3, I think that's enough of a time and enough of a bad start to a trip where that decision gets made, and it's kind of like, all right, let's just see how the rest of the trip goes, and we'll take care of business when they get back.
Are you at all surprised in that? I think, him getting relieved as general manager, I don't think is any surprise. I feel like that was always going to be a matter of when and not if, based on where this team's at right now, especially in the standings. And, we're almost at Christmas right now. But is there any part of you that is surprised that, like, I expected this, whether it was going to be Monday or Tuesday, I got to the point where I somewhat expected it, but what I expected was to hear that he's been relieved of his duties as general manager. Maybe he gets kicked somewhere upstairs. Maybe he gets kicked over to maybe something on the business side that really doesn't have anything to do on the hockey side. A role in this organization, at least right now, as we're recording this on Monday night, it certainly appears like he's just fired and he's not a part of the organization anymore. I mean, Terry Pegula pretty much, future endeavored him to use a WWE term like a Vince McMahon, kind of release. I don't have exactly in front of me what he said, but you get what I'm saying. It certainly appears like he's just fired and he's not part of the Sabres anymore. Are you at all surprised that this was that type of firing, and as opposed to potentially, hey man, you're not our GM anymore, but you know what? I still got a role for you. All right. Are you surprised at all by that?
Maybe a little bit, just because of how far back the relationship with the Pegulas and Kevyn Adams goes, because this goes back a long time. Matt Fairburn wrote a really good story, digging into Kevyn Adams's past and his history with the organization. Because even before he took over Harbor Center, he was still here, like doing work and, kind of close to ownership and whatnot. And, that's kind of how he was able to win their favor and get into a position where, he eventually becomes the general manager of the team. I mean, I think back to Jason Botterill's last season, which, again, gets all screwed up because of COVID and everything. But I remember those last few weeks of that season before everything got shut down, that Kevyn Adams was kind of traveling with Botterill and learning, and we're like, this is weird. This is a weird thing. Like this kind of stuff just doesn't happen, where you've got an executive who's not part of the front office, who's not, doesn't have any sort of, entrenchment with the team, with the organization. He was just the quote unquote, just the Harbor Center guy, just, the guy who runs the hockey academy at Harbor Center. And here he is, like, palling around with the GM, like, what the heck's going on here? And then, the moves happen the way that they do. And we're just kind of like, oh, were they training this guy? Was Jason Botterill accidentally training his replacement here? Like, this is weird. And weird is the best way to describe it. And the fact that they parted ways with him without, giving him another role is notable, because of that relationship that he had with the owners. And I think this became a situation where it was toxic enough that they had to completely sever ties, because if you move them, if you shuffle deck chairs, however way do you want to put it, if you put him in another role in the organization, people are going to say, like, how's Jarmo going to do his job as GM if the old GM is still hanging around and still has the ear of the owner, Yeah. And how close he is with the owner. So it's going to be, it becomes like a, if he's not named president of hockey ops, but like, isn't he just kind of just there to kind of keep Terry cool and, kind of guide his hand and do it, becomes a topic, it becomes a talking point for fans and all the rest of us to be like, what's even going on here? So I think cutting those ties and severing them completely and just saying, like, listen, enough's enough already. This didn't work. It stinks for everybody involved. We're moving on. I think that was necessary for them to do, because because you're looking at a thing where I think back to when they fired Lindy Ruff in 2012, 2013, that season, and they left Darcy Regier still as the GM. And you're like, these guys have been a pair forever. Like, if you get rid of one, you got to get rid of the other, right? And then, that just ended up delaying the issue for longer. In this case, if you keep Adams around in a different role after letting him go as the GM of the team, you'd be just going like, all right, like this is just the same old stuff from the Sabres. They just want to keep the same people around, and they don't want to upset the apple cart too much because that causes drama, blah, blah, blah. Like, just cut ties and call it a day. And I think that was necessary for them to do.
So we'll in a few minutes. I want to talk about the new general manager, and then we'll spend a few minutes maybe talking about the state of the team and some of the things that you may, foresee coming in the near future with them. But I got two takes on Kevyn Adams. I want to share with you and with everybody who's listening. And I want to kind of get your thought on that and follow it up with a question for you as well. I think as a general manager, he just wasn't, Joe, he just wasn't effective enough. It's not like he made a bunch of terrible moves that made this team significantly worse than what it was under his watch. To me, it never really got any better. There was never any sustainable, momentum that he built with this roster at a point. He'd make a move here, he'd make a move there, signing there, but it just never felt like there was momentum that was built under his watch as general manager. And then the thing that I think bothered a lot of fans, and look, even if he was the most cool, chill dude in the world, the most vibey dude, at some point all the losing's going to get to you no matter what. But I do think he came off as maybe not that identifiable with that, or even likable with a lot of fans. He had, and at least this is my interpretation. Now, again, it's different for you. You're not a fan. You're there. You're covering the team. You've developed some relationships with some of these guys, including to some extent, I'm sure Kevyn as well. But yeah, there was a snark tone to him at times, almost kind of like a smugness that I didn't like. And that ain't working when you're a losing team. So there's that. And for people who don't know this, by the way, the whole palm tree thing that took on a life of its own, my guest on this show right now had a lot to do with the whole palm tree. And in fairness to you, you gave him a chance to kind of get out of the woods with the comment that he made. Kind of real quick, just elaborate. Enlighten people who don't know what the hell I am talking about with the whole palm tree thing and your involvement in that, because I think it's kind of funny and cool.
Yeah, it last season, while they were very early on in their 13-game losing streak, there was a press conference with Kevyn, so we could ask him some questions and kind of get some things out. And there was a question where he was asked about free agency and things like that, which became a moment where he said something about how it's difficult to get guys. It's difficult to get guys, and sometimes it's tough, and you got to convince guys and all that. And my question to him is well, you're the GM, that's kind of your job to do that. So how do you do it? And that he took that as in a way, it's kind of throwing a life preserver to say all right, explain how, not exactly how you do your job, but here's the opening to say hey, this is how we do things and this is the way it goes. And
right.
Sometimes guys will just want to go, we make our best offer, and if they don't take it, then that's, it's tough for us, but we keep trying. That would have been a good way to answer it, a better way certainly than how he did. But then it turned into, it's we don't have palm trees, we don't, we got taxes, and it's oh boy. And that stuff just rings so hollow with fans, because they're buddy,
yes, put
together a team that wins, and no one's going to care. No one's going to care that, it's not sunny and you can't play golf in January here. Nobody's good. If you got a winning team and you can win a Stanley Cup, guys will go wherever. And it didn't help that Winnipeg was, running away with the best record of the league, and they're Winnipeg. There's no palm trees in Winnipeg. There's none of that stuff. So, all of those lines that he used, and he was, maybe trying to be funny, maybe trying to, just kind of joke around a little bit, but it fell flat, and it fell flatter than anything. And I mean, I don't know that Sabres Instagram and put the announcement out about Adams being fired, but every time they put out a waiver announcement or anything like that, the emoji, because there's emojis that come up under it, and no matter what, palm tree emojis are showing up under every single message they're sending out on Instagram. And I'm
it took a life out of its own.
Oh,
man.
Oh boy. And listen, and I'm just oh man, what a terrible legacy to have, and when you've got something like that, it's, I don't know if we were saying this at the time, but we're that's a future tombstone quote, because when you get fired, that's all anybody's going to remember.
Yeah.
And here we are. He's gotten fired, and the thing we're just always going to be stuck talking about and thinking about are palm. We don't have palm trees, but we're trying to get guys that want to be here, and like that's a whole other phrase that is makes sense on the whole, but also it takes a life of its own when you're not getting some of the other business taken care of.
Whether it's a smugness or just being frustrated with losing, that I'm sure that's hard to handle, and maybe you sometimes you choose your words wrong, and it really comes back and bites you. And I agree 100%. 10, 15, 20 years from now, people are going to associate Kevyn Adams with palm trees. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Let me ask you one more thing about Kevyn Adams here for now. Do you think him not having experience as general manager, I know there's people in the live chat arguing about whether you need experience or not to be successful, and you could find GMs without experience that have been successful. But let me ask you this. Do you think him not having experience, do you think him not having a lot of relationships maybe with other front office GMs or personnel around the league made it harder for him to be able to get things done, not having that network of relationships, because he just had no real, other than being a player, he had no real hockey experience, especially up in the front office? Do you think that hindered his ability to do his job at all?
100%. I 100% believe it did. And, having those relationships as a player and, knowing a lot of these guys, and I mean, let's face it, a lot of guys that he either played with or against are in primary roles across the league. And, like, whether they're head coaches, lead scouts, or they're GMs, or some of these guys are even presidents of teams, like think of like a Cam Neely in Boston or somebody like that, where, these are guys that he played against or were teammates with at some point in his career. These are guys that he knows, but, for some of those guys, they spent time in the trenches, and I say the trenches, either they were scouts or they were assistant GMs for years, or they spent time in organizations kind of learning different parts of the craft that they were going to be good at, or they came up through ranks elsewhere in hockey where, as soon as they got done playing, they were off coaching somewhere else, or, they coach in the AHL, coach in the ECHL, coach somewhere, and then kind of make your way up the ranks. And then suddenly you're there in the show. In Adams' case, he went from, and it's not his fault. To be fair, it's not his fault. It's just how this organization does things sometimes. But going from running Harbor Center, running the Academy of Hockey, and having a hand in working with the Junior Sabres and doing the stuff there is such a stark difference to running an NHL franchise. It is a monstrous difference. It is just such a massive change, and the responsibilities are exponentially higher. And the day he's hired for that job, I mean, his first duties are to fire 30 plus people throughout the organization.
Crazy.
Scouting staff, the entire AHL coaching staff, everybody. Like, it was the first job he had to do was to clean house. The second job was, hey, your best player just asked for a trade because he's now on his third different GM or his fourth different GM and about to have his like third or fourth different coach or something like that. How do you handle that? Also, your second best player, his contract's up in 2 years. He's not re-signing here. He's not staying here. How are you going to do that? You're one of your top defensemen. He wants to go. Good luck, buddy. And when I say all this, I'm talking about Eichel. I'm talking about Reinhart. I'm talking about Ristolainen. Three of your top players don't want to or will not stay here. Okay, like, how do you go about figuring that out? That's a horrible task to be dealt with as a new GM, because you're thinking, hey, we got all these guys here. If I make the handful of the right moves, we could be right there. Get it taken care of, get it set and solid, and we're good. And instead, it's like, crap, I have to make a losing trade for my best player. I have to make another trade for my second best player or other best player, however you want to talk about Reinhart. I got to figure out a way to get him out of here and not have the clock run out, and he just walks as a free agent. Well, that sucks too. Ristolainen, it was just kind of like, well, we got to pull the Band-Aid off here. Somebody's going to want him, right? And he made a good deal with Philly. Like, okay, you could argue he made good deals for all three guys, but you're going to be left holding the bag for it no matter what, because you're not going to get the same value back. You got some good picks and players out of it, but you're watching all these guys lift the Stanley Cup for, years afterwards. And you just end up looking like a bozo for doing it, but it's not your fault. Like, it's previous management's fault. It's ownership. It's whoever you want to put the blame on. That's not him. It's on them, but he's got to be the guy that's got to make the best of it. And that was a really unfair spot for him to be put in. And I've always said that. Because for any executive, whether they've got 50 years of experience or none, asking them to do that just sucks. It sucks the life out of the room. And, they've come close. They came close once, I should say. They haven't come close multiple times. They came close to the playoffs once, and you thought they were turning a corner, and Kevyn Adams definitely thought they were turning a corner, and just didn't build upon that. And that's really where his legacy hits the skids, because that year where they finish a point behind Florida out of the last spot, that should be the building momentum moment. And instead it was just kind of like, hey, we're good. We don't have to change anything.
Yeah.
And sometimes guys regress. And that's exactly what happened.
Last thing I'll say about Adams too is this. It's easy to say for us to sit back as fans or even media, I guess at times as well, and say, well, you should have never took the job. And listen, I would liken it to this. Let's use a restaurant as an example. And if I have a job and I'm washing dishes and I'm making X amount of dollars per hour, and even though I not qualified for it, the owner of the restaurant says, hey man, how would you like to be the manager of this place? Am I going to say no? Am I going to say no to that paycheck? Am I going to say no to that opportunity to go from being a dishwasher to, maybe that's not the greatest comparison, but you get my point. Go from being the low-level person in this operation to one of the most important, and making decisions on who's going to work here and who's not going to work here and who's going to be working these shifts and who's going to work where in the restaurant. I'm not saying no. Who would? Reasonably, So you're kind of right. It's like, did he do a good enough job? No. But do you blame him for taking the job? Because some people straight up blame him for taking the job, and I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to be mad at him for taking the opportunity. He was offered the job and he took it. I can't hate him on him for that, right?
No, at the time he was hired, there were only 31 of those jobs in the NHL. Now there are 32. But, you're offered that job, and it's like, say yes, or, you can keep running the rink. You keep running the amateur, academy. If you want to, like, it's up to you, buddy. And you're taking the big job. Like, it's an opportunity nobody is going to say no to, unless they've been in the game long enough and they can say no to that. Like, that's the only difference.
Sure.
In Kevin's case, that's the seat he wanted to get to. He had been an assistant coach before with Lindy. He's been in different parts of the job, of the sport, elsewhere. And management was where he wanted to be, and he wanted to be the guy to be the architect of the franchise. And you don't say no to it.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if he was paid as well as other GMs were, probably not. But at the same point, you're not saying no to that job, because if you do a good enough job with it, if you get fired, you're going to find you're going to be doing it again someplace else. And that's not to say he's not going to. He very well could, but 5.5 years of no playoffs, and granted, there are other barricades that come with doing this here in Buffalo that you have to contend with. Whether it's, money stuff, how the ownership wants to spend the money, whatever. But I don't know that there's enough on that resume to say, like, hey, you know what? The right situation, this guy might be able to do it. Maybe have him be an assistant someplace. I don't know. But right now, the overall picture that's painted from his time in Buffalo it isn't good enough. It wasn't good enough, and that's why he's out of work.
Yeah, I agree 100%. All right, let's do this. On the video side, we're going to take literally a 5-second break. We'll come back. Plenty more here with Joe Yerdon. All right, back here, EMERGIPOD style, talking Buffalo, presented by William Matar. Heard a car called William Matar, 444-4444. All right, so Kevyn Adams is out. We've talked about him Kekalainen is in. He was hired as a senior advisor in May. He's got experience, plenty of it. Parts of 12 seasons as GM in Columbus. They made the playoffs 5 times. I think they won a series with him as GM before that. He's worked with St. Louis and Ottawa. He's been an assistant GM. He's been a director of amateur scouting, European scouting. So this is a hockey guy with a lot of hockey front office and scouting experience. I saw a stat on Twitter today that was just nuts. First Sabres GM with experience in 46 years, man. You have to go all the way back to Scotty Bowman in 1979. I want to get your thoughts on this move, which is the expected move with Adams relieved. And I will go back to the statement that Pegula put out there one last time. He said all the right things in his statement. I had no issue with any of it, with the exception of one line. Somewhere along there, paraphrasing here, but after an exhaustive search, I'm like, yeah, really? That was an exhaustive search to come up with him. It's kind of like when they hired Lindy Ruff, and, and they interviewed all these candidates like it was some kind of extensive search. My ass. You knew it was going to be Lindy Ruff 5 minutes into the process. You knew if you fired Kevyn Adams 5 minutes. You knew when you hired him in May that if Kevyn Adams didn't work out, this was going to be your GM. And that's fine. That's fine to have that plan in place. But come on, an extensive, exhaustive search. What are we doing here with that statement? But beyond that, your thoughts on him now taking over this team as general manager. Who, by the way, not interim either. I'm going to put that out there as well.
Yeah, no, this is Jarmo's a guy I have a ton of respect for because he's put in the work all throughout hockey. I mean, this is a guy, if you want to do your upstate New York ties, New York ties that aren't New York City, played college hockey at Clarkson, so that's up towards Messina, up in that part of the state. So there is that, but he is, he's from Finland. He's a tough guy, and he's a smart guy when it comes to scouting and drafting. He very famously passed on Jesse Puljujärvi when he was GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and when everybody saw the Finnish guy passing on the Finnish top prospect, we go, hey, wait a minute. What?
Yeah.
What are we missing here? One of those moments where you're just kind of like, all right, okay. Now, the draft was a little odd in its own right, but he's a smart guy, and he's a tough negotiator. He's a tough GM to work with. And, the situation he had in Columbus, I know a lot of people have been very quick to snark on his record in Columbus, and they're just kind of like, I don't know, man. Last few years where it was his team, they weren't very good. And I'm like, well, it's another organization where things are run a little bit different there. But he's a guy who got Columbus to the playoffs a few times, got him to the second round a couple of times. And he's got ties with some legendary coaches. John Tortorella's one of them. Ken Hitchcock's another one. Some guys that everybody around here is very familiar with from hockey history. But he's a guy that when I look at what he's done throughout his time in hockey, it's very hard to not respect everything that he's done. And I think that's sorely needed in this role for Buffalo, because let's be real. People look at the Sabres and they're like, these guys are a mess. Like, this is a mess of an organization, not necessarily the team on the ice, because everybody recognizes there's a ton of talent on this team and in this organization, but getting it all together and getting the right guys in and getting the right people in place to make sure that all that talent can now congeal together to become a dominant winning team. That's a big part of the GM's job. And that's, a lot of that's where, things with Adams kind of fell apart, both, the free agency thing, which, I think free agency is kind of dead and done in the NHL period. Hot take.
Yeah.
Because you can't get what you're looking for in free agency anymore. You have to make trades, which Adams, again, infamously said, well, it's really tough to make trades. Well, says you, but, but it's also about getting your drafting right. And Adams drafted a lot of very talented players, but it's, I go back to, you draft Jack Quinn 1 year, you draft Roseanne, you draft Noah Ostlund, you draft Matt Savoy. These are, like 4 years in a row or 3 years, you got 4 of those guys in 3 years, whatever it was. It's a lot of guys with very similar statures and skill components that it's like you're not diversifying your portfolio very much here. And we're seeing that kind of play forward now where, they trade Savoy for McLeod. Okay, great. Benson outplayed Savoy to take his heir apparent spot away, and he's a very good player. Noah Ostlund is showing he's a very good player. Jack Quinn is a very good player. Needs to kind of be more consistent, but a lot of these guys get knocked around and they get pushed around a lot. Now Benson gives it back to guys, which is great to see. But when you've got guys that are all like the same kind of profile, it's a little tough. But Jarmo's a guy that when it comes to drafting, he knows the business, and he's got the relationships, he's got all the stuff. A lot of the stuff that Adams was lacking, Jarmo's got it. And I think the most important part is that Jarmo's got the respect of everybody around the league and in the business, that they know that things for those people, for the other agents and GMs and everybody, they know things are going to be operating a lot differently here now.
Let me ask you this. Now, we're recording this again. I got to remind everybody, for people who are going to be listening to this on Tuesday, because some people might actually listen to a press conference before they end up hearing this podcast. So we're recording this around 8:30 p.m. or so on Monday night. They're going to meet with the media at 10:30 a.m. on Tuesday. You don't expect Terry Pegula do you expect Terry Pegula to be there on Tuesday? I know he put out a statement. I mean, you're going to be introducing a new general manager, I assume. At this press conference, do you have expectations that he's going to be there? Do I bother asking you if you have expectations that he's going to field any questions if he does happen to be there?
Terry will be there. I don't think he's going to be answering any questions. I would be.
So he'll just make a statement and walk away.
He'll make a statement, thank Kevin for his time, and then introduce Jarmo, and then cede the stage to Jarmo to say a few words, and then take questions from us. But yeah, I don't expect Terry to answer any questions. It would be great if he did. It would be the first time since they fired Jason Botterill that he took any questions, but I'm not anticipating that to happen.
Let me ask you this too, Bob. We'll talk about the team right now itself. The situation that the Sabres are in is kind of like a glass half full, glass empty, depending on which way you choose to look at it. If you want to look at the glass being half empty right now, they're tied, as we record this on Monday night anyway, they're tied with Ottawa and Columbus for being last in the Eastern Conference with 32 points. And to get to the playoffs, if you count those two teams as well, they got to climb 7 teams right now to get in wild card position. That is a very daunting task. It's not the points as much as it is how many teams that you need to play better than to get there. That's the glass half empty. The glass half full is, dude, there's 6 points right now out of a wild card spot. There's 6 points right now, I believe, out of third place in the Eastern Conference right now, or I'm sorry, the division right now to get in the playoffs. Either route you look at it, there's 6 points back, and there's still 50 games. I mean, it's not. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just being a little overly optimistic right now because Kevyn Adams is gone. Maybe the new GM just gives them a lift. Maybe these players knew what was coming, and maybe that's part of the reason why they played better in these last handful of days after losing the first 3 on the road. That's wishful thinking on my end, I'm sure. But anyway, my point is there's still 50 games left. They played 32 games right now. It's not over. It's not over. I mean, we shouldn't even be talking about that being a possibility before Christmas, but we are because we always do. But it's not over, right?
It's was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Wait, we got to break out the Animal House lines here, right? It's not over, but this winning streak's got to be more than 3, and tearing off losses, 3 and 4 at a time's got to stop. Like that's the most important thing. Everybody in the East is at 500. Everybody, like it's. And you want to say like it's, they're in a good spot. Yes. But everybody's getting a point out of every game, seemingly, at least one. And that's the problem, because if you're losing games in regulation, you're losing at least 1 point to somebody that's ahead of you or somebody that's behind you, or you're just trying to you're just trying to steady your own ship. But you can't tread water, because you tread water, you're not going anywhere. And even if you win 5 in a row, you might not go anywhere either. Like that's the hard part about this. And yeah, it's the point difference seems small, but it's when you got more teams in front of you than points that you're out, that makes it a lot harder, because you can only control who you're playing against. And if you've got, if there's a team in front of you that you beat, cool, you got them, but did everybody else in front of you lose?
Yeah.
Like, are other teams, going on giant heaters? All of that kind of stuff just plays into it. So it is tough. It is difficult, but you just got, it's Al Davis. Just win, baby. You just got to win, get at least a point every night, but try to get to as many as you can, which, that's pretty straightforward. That's how it goes. But yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult. And any slip ups where it's more than 2 or 3 games at a time for losing, you're just giving all that ground back, and it gets away from you way faster than you can get it back.
I want the Sabres to get out of heater, in part because I want you to be able to cover a winner right now, because unfortunately for you, the Detroit Lions, well, if everyone knows this, who's been around for a long time, Joe's been coming on the show with me for years. Joe's not a Bills fan. Joe's a Bills watcher, which is one of the reasons why I've always loved talking Bills with you on this show, because I love talking to people who aren't fans, who are going to give me objective analysis all the time. But you are a Detroit Lions fan, a big Detroit Lions fan, and injuries have really, really derailed that team this year. They have gotten, we complain here in Buffalo for good reason with all the injuries the Bills have suffered this year. That ain't nothing compared to what the Detroit Lions have went through on the injury front. But
2 years in a row now, man. It's so hard. I look back at the defensive unit they started against Washington in the playoffs last year, and it's like, boy, and going back, and I remember watching that game and being like, I forgot they had signed Jamal Adams, and I was like, I thought that guy was retired, and he was just out of work, and then the Lions signed him because everybody else dropped dead. But now it's, what is it? Brian Branch is out now.
Yep.
They've been without Terry Arnold for a while. Kobe Joseph's been hurt all, but it's always the guys in the secondary where that's always been, an issue spot for them. But in the last couple of years, it actually got pretty good, and now they're all hurt.
Listen, man,
it sucks, man.
It sucks because, and I'm being dead honest with you, I'm not just saying this because you're on the show. I don't think they're going to get into the playoffs, but if they do, they could literally win the Super Bowl. They could beat any team in the NFL. Dude, that offense could score 35. They're like the Bills in a way, different kind of way, but they could score 35 on anybody. I don't give a shit who's on the other side of the field. Between Goff and 2 incredible running backs, and Jameson, of course, St. Brown, Laporta, who's, by the way, he's hurt. Everyone on this team.
He's always hurt too, though.
Yeah, but their defense is just an absolute mass unit. It really sucks. I think there's a lot of Bills fans that really like Detroit because I feel like it's very relatable. The Lions are just so relatable to the Buffalo Bills, in terms of like the fan base deserves a championship. And sometimes fan bases say they deserve it and they don't. Bills fans deserve a championship, and so do Detroit Lions fans too, as well. The NFC's wild, man. I can't believe
AFC
the NFL's wild.
Dude. Everything's
I was going to
crazy.
say, no Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs this year, no Joe Burrow in the playoffs this year. Lamar Jackson is fighting to get in. Jared Goff is probably not going to get into the playoffs with that Detroit team. Dallas, unless they win out and Philly loses out, which that ain't going to happen. So Dallas is pretty much shot already. It's just, man, it's so crazy this year in the NFL. Meanwhile, either Tampa or Carolina, one of those teams have to get in to the playoffs. The NFC South just perennially sucks it in. And it sucks that a team like that could get in and a team like Detroit could be on the outs. That's
like literally them's the breaks, though. Like that's the kind of stuff happen. I know a lot of people were surprised about the Bears, but I was like, no, man, Ben Johnson can coach, dude. That guy's a hell of a coach. And everybody's like, how did Detroit let him go? And I'm like, you don't keep an OC forever. Like they gave it a shot. They got to 15-2 last year, and it was like, well, if you don't win in that year, your coaches are probably leaving. And they, both, him and Aaron Glenn both left, and it was just like, well, what you can't just hang on to your assistants forever. Assistants go to new jobs all over the place all the time. And to Dan Campbell's credit, he's kept it going as well as you can, given all of that,
Sure.
all the injuries and everything. And, Goff's, listen, you remember I was a huge Goff hater, and mostly because I love Stafford to the end of the earth. What a friggin' quarterback. But
Probably your MVP this year. Probably not locked in. Josh Allen's going to have something to say about that potentially at the end here, but Stafford's probably the MVP this year.
yeah, and he's just, there's not enough good things I can say about Stafford. Sucks to see him beat my team this week, but that's how it goes. But Goff, I went from hating Goff to being like, all right, respect. The Robert Redford gif where he's just like sitting there in the boat and he's just nodding and he's like, all right, buddy, you're doing the good job. Like, good for you, man. Because if they had to go looking for another quarterback, I know everybody freaked out when they paid Goff, $1 gazillion, which, if you got a good quarterback, you got to sign him. Good luck. You got to pay him $65 million a year now. That's just how it goes. But he's been great. And yeah, Laporta gets hurt, stinks, but Williams and St. Brown are great. Jameer Gibbs is a friggin' freak show.
He's awesome.
God, what a player. And remember that draft happened and everybody trashed Detroit for that draft. And I was like, hang on. These guys are friggin' athletes, man. That's what Dan Campbell was going for with that whole draft. And the first 4 guys they picked are all friggin' freaks of nature stars. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Let me wrap by asking you this. We'll go back to the Sabres. Plenty of bills coming up throughout the week. Some immediate, so the new GM, and he's going to have some decisions to make rather quickly. Alex Tuch's contract situation is probably at the forefront. Mm-hmm. Are they going to get something done? And if not, who are you trading him to? What are you getting for him? That's something that they're going to have to figure out relatively quickly. So there's that. There's a Tariq goalie situation, even though for the time being, right now Ellis is on injured reserve. But I don't know, maybe that has to get addressed again at some point. We know how Lindy Ruff feels about it, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. And maybe not immediate, but Tuck's the only big time pending unrestricted free agent. But there's good, and I mean really good, restricted free agents here after this season on this team. Benson and Doan and Kesselring. Rosane, Krebs, a lot of decisions to make in a relatively short amount of time for the new GM, right?
Yeah, and I think it's probably for the best that Jarmo's been here since May, because he's probably got a really good idea of who should be part of this going forward, and what you should be, financially speaking, what you should be aiming for with these guys, because you can't just drop the bank on all these guys. And I think Tuck's the only guy that's really the one where you're spending big cash for. I think everybody else, especially the younger guys, you're thinking, you're talking bridge deals or, just getting things done that way. Just get it done easy. All right, let's see what you're about. And, maybe in 2 years we'll think about spending the big bucks on you. But Tuck's the main guy. And now that Adams is gone, I'm very curious how that is going to work with Jarmo, because I don't know. I mean, none of us get to speak to Jarmo about the team. It's just assistant GMs are basically off our hands. We can't talk to them. It's like assistant coaches. You can't talk to assistant coaches. It's the way the world works in hockey. But I do wonder what that relationship is like with the Bartletts. Those are, Tuck's agents, the Bartletts, they're based out of Rochester, but Tuck's situation as well is just really interesting because he's 30, and that's not really an guy you give 8 years to. And you got to think he's asking for $10 million a year. Everybody else that could have been a free agent this summer is already basically signed, and they've signed for between $9.5 and $10.5, $11 million a year. And I don't know if that's the kind of money Terry's looking to spend on a guy, even for a guy that wants to be here, who's from Syracuse, who grew up a Sabres. Everything is in Tuck's court for being able to cash in. Should have been an easy thing to get taken care of, but here we are, and we're a few months out. We just saw 2 monstrous trades happen where you're going to get a lot more in a trade now than you will in March at the deadline, because if you're thinking you're going to get 2 or 3 players in a first rounder for a guy whose contract ends in 2 months, it ain't happening. That is not going to happen. But if you want to make that trade, you do it now. And I don't know that they're in a big hurry to make that kind of move right now because they just won 3 in a row and now they're back in the playoff picture. And Alex Tuch wants to be the guy that helps them do it. So, yeah.
2 things with Kevyn Adams. I am not going to miss. Look, he's a human being, man. Making fun of somebody for losing their job is usually a bad look, unless that guy's a real asshole. You know what I mean? A real jerk. Don't relish. You know, you could be. It's good for the team, and I'll leave it at that. I think the Sabres are better off with them going in a different direction. But I'm not going to sit there and relish the fact that a man lost his job. You know, that's not cool. But I ain't going to miss some of the shit. And one of the things I ain't going to miss is having to hear people who want to be here. I don't want to hear that. I'm tired of hearing people who want to be here. I want to have people here who can play hockey, all right? I don't give a shit what their attitude is. Can they play? That's what I care about personally. Alex Tuch, tell me if I'm wrong, man. I don't try to pretend like I have my finger on the pulse of the Sabres and the fan base. Again, you're at that arena every day. You cover the team. You interact with fans all the time. I get a sense, and maybe I'm wrong, that 6 months ago, it would have been hell to trade Tuch and not have him sign a long-term deal. Right now, as we're getting into January, I am getting a growing sense that I think Sabres fans would be perfectly good if you could get something of value if they traded him. And they didn't give him a long-term, big money contract. Maybe it's because you got guys like Oslin and Roseanne and Hellenius or whatever, I don't know, whatever, in the farm system are ready to come up and start playing. Do you kind of get a sense that fans are good with trading Tuch right now? Or maybe at least more than it was a few months ago? Maybe I'm off base, though, because, again, I don't know.
The feeling I get from Sabres fans is that they want to get a sense that guys care, which they do, but also, like, guys want to friggin' win and, like, get business taken care of here. Like, I think fans are so beyond the point of not broken, but just, like, figure it out, and we'll be there for you when you do. I think that's where they're at right now. And the players, when it comes down to it, you want to see the guys have the passion for the team and to take care of each other and to, want to win. It seems so corny to say that kind of stuff, but it's such an easy sell for fans to be able to get guys that have that give a shit meter where it goes off the charts. And, guys like, I've been so impressed with Thompson because he's really taken that leadership by, kind of by the collar and said, like, all right, let's go effing do this. Yeah. I think Tuch's wired similarly. He's just in a different position right now because of the contract and because, the future is still kind of up for grabs with him. And, does he love being a Sabre? Absolutely. Does he love playing for the Sabres? He does. But, the future could change at any point. And that's why I think this moment where you're swapping out Adams for Kekalainen is I would like to think you can get that squared away fast. Either he signs or you're trading him. You can get that figured out very quickly. And I know negotiations are, can be very fickle, and you need things to get squared away one way or another for different guys. But I think if you're Jarmo, you got to know right now, like, can we make this work? Can this get done? If not, then all right, where do you want to go? Because we'll try to figure that out, because a list of suitors for who would want Alex Tuch would be pretty friggin' long. Let's be real.
Let me read a comment, Joe, real quick here in the live chat from Bruton. He says he's a good player, meaning Tuch, of course, who's willing to sign here. Why would we not do that? It's exactly what we need more of. Well, let me ask you this. He wants to sign. Why hasn't he signed here yet, then? Do you think the Sabres have lowballed him? Do you think the Sabres don't want him? I kind of feel like maybe Alex Tuch isn't giving this organization the big hometown discount because he wants to be here so bad that maybe a lot of fans thought a year or so ago that he'd be willing to give. Like, this is a man making a living. This is business. This is his big contract. This is his generational, for generations to come, payday for his family. And he wants to get paid. I'm not saying he doesn't want to be here. I do believe he wants to be here, but he ain't trying to leave $3 million a year on the table to sign with the Buffalo Sabres, who are not very good right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and I think that's a bigger part of what goes into this. I remember talking with Alex last year for a different story about like what it was like when he went through his, when he had negotiated his extension when he was in Vegas. And he's like, well, I didn't have to negotiate it. Vegas came to me with an offer, and I was like, oh, okay. And like, talking out with my agents, and we go over it, and we're just kind of, he's like, hell yeah, let's do it. Like, cause he was younger, and like the money and the years were, was security, but like the money was kind of like, yeah, man, Vegas, like, let's do this. This is great. Fast forward a couple of years, he's an even better player. And now he's, a bargain player because he's not being paid as much as he should be for what he's doing on the ice. And then it's just kind of like, yeah, man, like, glad I got a deal locked up, and it was like, cool, making big money now, but also like, holy crap, I could be making way more. I'm scoring 30 goals a year, getting, 70, 80 points. And I'm being, I'm making, what, $4.5 million a year, $5 million a year, whatever it is. And it's just kind of like, boy, I could have been making 8.5 instead. And that'd be a lot better than this. And so now he's technically like a late free agent because, his contract came up when he turns 30, which, if you're going to be entering UFA the first time, you want to be like 27 instead, because then it's like, hey, I can do that 8 years, because then you're thinking, if you're a GM, the last couple of years are going to be like, well, they probably won't be as good, but we're going to get 6 really good years out of you. At 30, it's like, how many good years are we getting here? And that's the biggest question for a GM. And I think, if the offer is like a 4-year, if you say like, if you went 4 years, 40 for Alex, I wonder if that would be like, okay, that's a good start. I'd rather have like 6 years. Like, I want 8. If you're not going to do 8, let's do 6. And then Buffalo says like, maybe 4. And then, I don't know, maybe they're not pitching $10 million a year. Maybe they're pitching 8.5, 9. And it's like, hey man, like, that's when the negotiations just kind of like, all right, call me when you get serious about this, or, like whatever. Alex has said he's very hands-off in negotiations. He leaves it to his agents, which is always a better idea, because the agents are going to take care of business for you because they want to get paid too. But it's a very awkward spot for any team. This, whether it's Buffalo or somebody else, if they acquire him, to try to get up, because Alex is going to want the years and he's going to want the money, and he should get the money because he's produced to get the money. He's a really good two-way player. He's a 30-goal guy, great talent, like super guy in the room. Like, there's nowhere to go wrong on this. It's just, he's 30, and like, that's a magic line in the sand for a lot of players, because once you get past 30, you're kind of rolling the dice. Get those years in before you're 30, then it's like, okay, cool. We're at least playing with house money a little bit for a few years, but after 30, you just don't know when. And, he's had injuries the last couple of years where it's like, well, if that stuff piles up as you get older, if you sign him for 8 years, then you're like, oh boy, this could go south quick.
Yeah. Let's get to one last question here in the live chat. And by the way, thank you everybody who's been popping in on the live side, man. Been well over 1,000 people here on a Monday, a Sabres hockey on Monday night recording. Flapplesauce said, I don't think Jarmo takes a job without assurances. He'll have freedom. So I want you to answer that, and then I'll kind of pile on that a little bit as well. Again, the presser is going to be on Tuesday, 10:30. By the time some people listen to this, that will have already happened. I don't expect fireworks to go on at this press conference. I don't think anything else is going to happen like immediately, literally right there in the moment. But is shit going to hit the fan? Him having freedom, some assurances of freedom to make hockey moves here as the new general manager. Do you think he has that? And assuming yes, is it going to be long before shit starts to hit the fan? Do you expect an aggressive next handful of months from him, or do you think he maybe says, I kind of want to see how things unfold for the next few months, and then maybe we'll start to make some moves at that point? What are you expecting starting Tuesday from the new general manager?
I can't expect Jarmo would take this job with any sense of like there being handcuffs on what he can and can't do. He's put in enough time and enough work and has enough on his resume to say he knows what he's doing. He's, you're here to do the job as you need to do it. I think what's going to be interesting is how he sets up the people around him. If he wants to get if he wants to move on from Jason Carmanos as AGM, if he wants to get somebody else as an AGM, if he wants to change up his scouting look. There's a lot of stuff going on here because it's a very, for as much as Adams had to clean house when he took over, it's a very pretty sizable staff now with people around that are there. And I do wonder how Jarmo feels about like his, recent coworkers here and how he wants to put them to work, or if he wants to get different people involved in there. I can't imagine they're going to say like, well, you can't bring these guys in for XYZ reason. If that's the case, I'd just be like, well, what'd you hire me for? Why am I here? Why am I doing this job if you're not going to let me do what I need to do? So I think Jarmo's going to have the green light to do it. How aggressive he does it out of the gate, I guess we'll see. It's very tough to forecast because we don't know what Jarmo likes. We don't know what he doesn't like. And how is that going to work with Lindy? I think Lindy's cool with things as long as he's just like, give me the guys that are here. Give me the guys that I need to have here. And like, just let me do my thing. I think that's the important part for Lindy. But I think in Jarmo's case, when it comes to taking care of some of the immediate business with the players and getting the roster in place that he wants to get done, if they've got shackles on him for any of that stuff, if I'm him, I wouldn't be taking the job. I'd be like, I'll see you later. I'll resign right now. But I imagine Jarmo's going to be able to do what he needs to do and what he envisions this organization needs moving ahead.
I'm interested in what Lindy Ruff says publicly about this. I don't think Lindy Ruff is very good at bullshitting. I don't think he's very good at saying things that he doesn't believe. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say. I'm not going to look forward to Terry Pegula saying anything because I know that's not going to happen. I'm looking forward to you and everyone else continuing to cover this story. And I'll tell you this, I'm perked up now. You know what I mean? Like, I'm intrigued. Now I'm interested right now with what's going on with the Sabres. And certainly, at least for the interim anyway, I'm going to be paying a lot more attention to the game. It started out, I was watching all the games early on, and then I kind of sunk into, well, in fairness, some of it's football too. You know what I mean? That's always, for me, going to take precedent. But I stopped making time. I got annoyed with the team, and I'm like, whatever. It's just more of the same. So it's not more of the same now because they made a big move here. So they got a GM with experience. So now my ears are perked up. And I'm interested to see what they're going to do.
I was going to say, you sounded off. I think it was just a week ago. I think it was after the Calgary game. You were like, I effing hate this team.
I hate it.
I was like, oh boy, this is like 5 years ago.
It reminds me
losing streak Sabres. Holy cow.
I wish some of the people who come into these live chats now, some of them are, I don't want to say new, but they're relatively new. And by the way, sometimes a small percent of people forget that this is talking Buffalo and not talking Bills. So people get mad at me whenever I do anything or have any guests that is not Buffalo Bills. There's always a smattering of those people, and I still appreciate that. But anyway, yeah, to Joe's point, I used to live in Florida, and Joe was on with me every single week at that time, and I just had an absolute hatred of this organization, a hate affair with the Buffalo Sabres, and I got that way again at some point this season. It just absolutely hated this organization. And I'm going to be honest, last thing here, I did not expect, well, in the last few days I've expected this, but I didn't expect it until the season was over. Maybe that's why that's what fueled so much of my hatred. I'm like, this team can finish dead last again, and at the end of the year, they're just not going to retain Kevyn Adams. They're not going to retain Lindy Ruff. The contracts run out or whatever, and then that's it, and then who knows what the hell they do. I don't know anything about prospects. I know Gavin McKenna was the top prospect at one time, the undisputed top prospect. I guess it's not the same right now, but I was already in gag for Gavin mode. I was ready to have a lot of fun with it for the second half of this season. But I don't know, man. I got a little bit of energy right now because of this move. And I would assume, am I right to assume, Joe? I think this is going to energize, to some extent, some fans to maybe give you a little bit of sliver of hope that, you got a real hockey guy in here now that he's going to make some good hockey moves and things are going to turn around.
Well, I think now if they have another game where they start getting their tails kicked by the New Jersey Devils at home in front of a sellout crowd. They won't be able to say fire Kevyn. They're going to pick up the other chant they tried to make happen that night was sell the team. So I hope Terry's prepared for that one if things go on the skids again. Because
do you think that had anything to do? Anything to do? Listen. Terry's not oblivious to fans at his arena chanting "sell the team." You think that might have played a role in maybe potentially at least a little bit of an acceleration of the firing the GM process?
It's definitely more of a shot across the bow. I mean, if they didn't do anything last year when fans were bringing inflatable palm trees to the arena and wearing paper bags and all that stuff, I mean, they caved to other stuff years ago, like the team getting booed off the ice during Ron Ralston's last few games as a Sabres head coach and Darcy Regeer's last few games as the GM. It was fans were pissed. I don't know if you remember back then, the beginning of that 13-14 season, but the team looked like garbage. Like they looked like a team that had never played hockey before. And the fans were just like, this sucks out loud. Like, fire Darcy. I mean, Ralston, I don't think anybody cared about Ron Ralston, but Darcy, they were just like, get this guy out of here. And then next thing you know, Pat LaFontaine and Ted Nolan are walking through the door again. So, yeah.
And let's also be honest. I don't care if it's you or Mike or Rachel or Heather or Bill or Fairburn or anyone else. Are you rooting for the Sabres to win? Like, rah, rah, let's go team? No. Is life more fun and a little easier to go to the rink every day and deal with a coach and a general manager and players in the locker room when they're playing good, competitive hockey and they're enthusiastic about getting into the rink because they're playing well? Yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would be, I think it's oblivious for any writer to say that they don't give a shit about, how the team is playing. So maybe if nothing else, this team just improving their quality of play can make it a little bit easier on all you guys and girls who are, have to be at that arena every day.
It's, we can all confirm that our bottom lines have taken a hit over the years by covering a team that people just fell out of love for and stopped giving a crap about over the years because when the bottom line is just like, yep, they're losing, yep, they're in the lottery again, and nope, it's not even the number one pick. It's hard to care, and I get it. Like, I respect it completely. Like, my whole thing is like, hey, when they start winning, just open arms, come on back. Like, we're here for you. We've been here the whole time, but like, we understand it's time to come back now. But
let's say it's not winter,
nice to
Joe.
get to that point.
Let's say it's not winter right now, and I'm a little bitch, man. I do not like going out in the winter unless I have to, okay? If it was nicer out, you and I probably with a couple hours notice, we're at Imperial Pizza right now. We're having some wings, and we're doing this show. Again, I'm just a little bit of a little bitch. I don't want to go out if I don't need to, so we could do it this way. But if the weather's better, you and I are out at Imperial Pizza, and we just had some wings and a pint, and unfortunately, it's not Utica Club like we used to be able to get at Casey's. Yeah. But whatever. It's whatever beer it is, and fans go up to you and they talk to you, Joe. Does it get a little, I don't say depressing, but gloomy when fans talk to you in person out somewhere at a bar, restaurant, whatever it may be, or even, I guess, on social media, too? It's just, but the team's stinking. It's kind of like the energy of, and I understand the frustration, but it's like when you always have to hear about how much the team that you cover stinks, I would imagine it weighs on you at least a little bit after a while.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, sometimes after a season, it'll hit me, or it's just like, man, that's incredible. I mean, to be fair, we've had a couple of seasons where it was just all-time nightmare bad. Like one of the, the 14-15 team was one of the worst hockey teams ever assembled.
Like a permanent funeral in the line.
Like, yeah. Statistically speaking, it was just like, you're looking at this and you're like, wow, I didn't think hockey could be played this poorly before. And just every night you're seeing it and you're like, that was more like every night was just like a different kind of horrific car crash. And you're like, I can't take my eyes off of this. This is incredible, because you're watching something that will never be equaled again. Whereas, the last few years, it's like, oh man, they're going to be, 13th in the East. They're going to be, they're going to have like the 7th or probably the 8th pick in the draft, because that's where they always pick. And you're just like, all right, well, cool. Another bad year. Whereas like fans, I think fans that, if I do get recognized, if I'm out and somebody, the reaction now is, man, how do you keep doing this? And I'm like, you're a fan. How do you keep doing it? And they're just kind of like, most fans are just kind of like, I tune out at a certain point and then focus on the Bills. And then when Bills season's over, it's like, all right, well, I guess I'll pay a little bit of attention, but a lot more people have been like, hey, what are the Bandits up to? You know, and that's, you know, hey, they're the winning team, man. So I get it. But, you know, but with the Sabres, it's just like there's a huge amount of sadness because fans want to love the Sabres. Fans love
100%. This is a good fan base.
But they've been like beat down for over a decade now. And they're just like, you know, I don't want to be depressed. There's 1,000 other things in life to be depressed about. I don't want to be depressed about my hockey team that's supposed to bring me joy. And the team doesn't bring you any joy, then it's just, oh, well, work sucked today. You know, it snowed. You know, we got a foot of snow, and now, the Sabres are they're losing 5-0. Oh, man. It sucks. You know, and it's, you know, for us, it's our job. It's what we do. And, like, if anybody wants to come up and tell me the Sabres suck, and I don't take it. It's not something I take personally. I'm just kind of like, hey, I get it. Like, I have full sympathy for all the fans that stick with it because there's plenty of fans that are just kind of like, whatever, man. I'll pick them up when they decide to figure it out, which I respect. I get. But for anybody else who's still like, come on, you guys, figure this out. Like, just win some games. Like, my hat's off to them every time.
So Joe from Queens always calls me pandering Pat or says that I'm a ball washer because I speak, whatever. I'm not pandering here. And I truly mean this. The fan base does deserve better. I mean, the fact that to even fill up 60% of the arena with the way this team has played for so many years right now, to me, is pretty incredible. And the ratings on TV are still really good in the Buffalo market, despite the fact that this has been, for the most part, a dumpster fire of an organization. That's just, it would be great to see the fans. But, to your point, in terms of, like, say, now with me, it's a little different. As a content creator, in my home right now, I am going, I'm behind my microphone with the camera and all these fancy lights. I'm going to turn them off in about 10 minutes, and I'm going to go in my kitchen, which is 5 feet away, and I'm going to make a sandwich and have a couple Little Debbie Christmas tree cakes, something like that. I ain't at the stadium. I ain't at the arena. I ain't got to deal with the coach and the GM and the players who are in shitty moods because they keep losing, where you guys do cover the team do. And again, it's not like playing a little sympathy, violin for you guys. It's a job. It's the gig. It's part of what it is. But I would rather cover a team, and I've said this before, that absolutely sucks than I would a middling 500 team. Like, if the Bills can't be a Super Bowl team, because the Bills are always going to be the primary team that I talk about on this show. Mm-hmm. If the Bills aren't contending for a Super Bowl, I'd rather the Bills were 3-13. Now, I've been fortunate. I started this podcast in 2018. So, and they were not good that year, but you knew they were going to be good. And they've been good every year since. So I haven't had to have that lull yet. But you know what I mean? You guys are probably, you're used to this shit, man. It sucks.
But you remember it, though. Like, the Bills missed the playoffs for 18 years in a row. It's not that long ago. I covered games at the end of I covered Bills games at the end of that run with Rex Ryan here and all that nonsense. So, I get it, man. Like, I totally get it. Frig, man. I'm a Lions fan. I understand. It means to root for a team that just, kicks you in the face every day. Like, I totally get it. So,
yeah, let's.
But it's fascinating when it's hockey, just because it's, half the league makes the playoffs. Usually, all you have to do is like dumb luck your way into the postseason every now and again, and you're golden. But it was very interesting when, I got to talk to some folks at Edmonton the past couple weeks, because they came through here, and then Buffalo was up there. I'm talking to some folks in Edmonton tomorrow about, what's going on here, and the amount of sympathy you get from people there that are just like, man, we were going through this. And I'm like, yeah, I remember. It's not that long ago.
You hear a lot of people, like the national media and the national podcasters and analysts stuff. They do talk about the Sabres with almost like a sense of feeling bad, truly bad for the organization, but especially not so much the organization, but definitely for the fans. And you're right. Half the league makes the playoffs, man. It's kind of like when Rob Ray played for the Sabres. Like, he sucked at scoring goals, but a couple went off his head, you know what I mean? And in the net, they found their way. You would think at some point, dumb luck, lady luck would work in the Sabres' favor, and they'd back their way into a playoff at some point. But it hasn't happened yet. It's probably not going to happen this year. But again, at least things are going to be interesting going forward. Make sure you follow. By the way, Joe, because it's been a hot minute since I've had you on, I feel like I could just sit there and bullshit you and keep asking you questions for another 2 hours. But I know there's a lot going on here Tuesday, so I'm going to let you chill and get ready for that. Make sure you guys are following Joe on his socials, whether it's Blue Sky or Twitter. It's at Joe Yerdon for both. Of course, Bleacher Report, and you can check out Joe's tweets, his live in-game tweets every game, and all that hockey content stuff as well, man. Appreciate you very much for doing this, man. Fun having you on, and thank you for doing this, as usual, on very little notice.
I appreciate the invite always. It's always good catching up with you and yapping about this team because, man, it might stay the same, but it changes constantly.
It certainly does. All right, Joe Yerdon, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody in the live chat. Well over 1,000 people who stopped in for our Tuesday podcast. Like I said, everything's pushed back a day now. We're going to have our film review and biggest Bills takeaways on tomorrow's show. Matt Warren will join me as usual on Thursday, and then we'll have a Bills Browns preview on Friday's show. If anything else happens with the Sabres, and who knows, maybe it will. We'll talk about that as well. Talk to you guys tomorrow.